Christo and Valle Christian Parables and their relation to the community in the Rio Grande Valley. For those of you that do not know, the Rio Grande Valley is a delta at the bottom of Texas from the Nueces River down to the Rio Grande. The Lower Rio Grande Valley, or LRGV, is half of this area and encompasses the Star, Hidalgo, Willacy, and Cameron counties. The LRGV is colloquially known as the 956, our designated area code, and the RGV. The RGV is a 90.9% Hispanic population and predominantly Catholic. It is contained within internal and external border patrol checkpoints, the former having been established in the 1920s as a means of protecting America from drug trafficking. The valley has been a hub for border artists since the establishment of the U.S.-Mexico border in 1848. So what is a border artist? A border artist is defined as someone who creates work in or about the border. This can include individuals physically of the borderlands, those who are not from the borderlands espacios, and those who exist in the aspects of Nepantla. It includes those who are culturally of the borderlands, those who enrich the community, and work to better its people. In this presentation, I will be discussing those who are culturally of the borderlands, those who are physically from the borderlands, and those who have devoted a meaningful chapter in their lives to the borderlands community. As introduced by Dr. Bernier, the parable of the Good Samaritan is one we know. A lawyer challenges Jesus to answer the question of who is my neighbor. Jesus answers with a tale, and the lawyer, after being prompted by Christ, says the Samaritan is thy neighbor. Christ then instructs the lawyer to go out and be like the Good Samaritan. The purpose of this presentation is not only to highlight the impacts of Christianity and Christian iconography in the RGV borderlands, but to reflect on and make informed decisions regarding the truth of the parable of thy neighbor. Highlighting the prevalence of Catholicism in the RGV, we will start by discussing the most influential mission within its borders. The Basilica of Our Lady of San Juan del Valle is the largest shrine and mission in the Rio Grande Valley. Originally established in 1920, it has served Catholics across the valley and welcomed millions of visitors annually as a pilgrimage site. The basilica you see today is not the original structure. In 1970, an aircraft crashed into the shrine during Mass. There were no casualties aside from the pilot, but the shrine would burn to the ground. Amidst the flames, a statue of Our Lady, who you can see here in the central shrine, was left standing, now placed at the center of the newly erected shrine as a symbol of faith and divine protection in 1976. The title of National Shrine was conferred upon Our Lady of San Juan del Valle in 1998 by the National Conference of Catholic Bishops. In 1999, Pope John Paul II bestowed the honor of a minor basilica as a testament to the shrine's significance. The prevalence of culture and Christianity is not only celebrated in the Valley, but across the colonized Americas. My friend and colleague Carlos Limas provides a glimpse into this shared cultural history. Mr. Limas received his BA in graphic design from the Instituto Profesional de Arte y Diseño in Monterrey, his BA in studio art from La Académie Royale des Beaux-Arts of Brussels, and his MFA from UTRGV. He has remained in the RGV since obtaining his MFA. He is currently the department chair for the Visual Arts program and a photography instructor at South Texas College. He is a very patient man who uses his knowledge to better the RGV art community. His work Con la Cire Destino Sur captures the dynamic and integral foundations in Peruvian cultural and religious practices. The series spans the 7 years he worked as a program specialist for the Center of Latin American Arts at UTRGV, covering events and expeditions in Mexico, Peru, and the United States. His photos are more than simple documentations. He captures the intrigue and vibrancy while maintaining a degree of separation through black and white imagery, allowing the audience to use their imagination to fill in the blanks and the saturation of colors of Peru. His positions in higher education have allowed him to disseminate transnational identities and bicultural realities that are both similar and unique to the two nations of Mexico and Peru to the students of the Valley. With this image in particular, Mr. Limas presents the Corpus Christi festival and procession. He places his audience in the crowd, watching as the forms of saints and virgins cross the streets of Cusco. Utilizing the rule of thirds, Mr. Limas positions the figure of the Virgen as the focal point while maintaining balance and acknowledging the presence of the citizens of Cusco. In taking this photograph, he draws connections to Peru, Mexico, and the RGV through religious expression, practices, and our collective humanity and spiritualism. The procession showcases a strong sense of community and mirrors events and gatherings in the Valley. The next artist I am choosing to showcases a part of this communal culture in the RGV. Cynthia Vasquez received her BFA in studio art with an emphasis in art education and photography from UTRGV. She became a K-12 art educator and is currently a photography lab assistant and MA candidate in English as a second language at UTRGV. She is a very bright young lady and incredibly generous. Veladoras is one photograph of a pair that illuminates its namesake. Pun intended. Ms. Vasquez came upon the congregation of veladoras while working as a part of a program with National Geographic. The intimacy of the image provides a humanization of the candles. Each candle bears the Virgen de Guadalupe, but acts as a placeholder for an individual. Each a different size, color, and fulfills a representational niche. Each gathering in one location for prayer and healing, each candle lit for a single person, each for a single person or a family. The vast scale of the candles provides a deeper understanding of individual faith and that of collective faith. The large congregation of individuals represented by the candles marks the communal aspect of faith and faith-based practice, as a means of belonging and the almost universal acknowledgement of the power of prayer and the power of the Virgen, as well as a larger symbology of her image as the Virgin Mother. Combined with spiritual community, there is a cultural community and solidarity expressed by the cities of the valley. Mr. Limas and Ms. Vasquez are the native to the borderlands, but represent the Latin American aspects of the binational environment. Along the Rio Grande sit the states of Texas and Tamaulipas. Each state bridges into the other, allowing trade, cultural exchange, and accessible travel for families separated by the river for work and sometimes safety. Texas and Tamaulipas share many international bridges, but have 8 distinct sister cities. Having sister cities is a large part of the culture of the Rio Grande Valley. Sister cities play such a large role that the cities of Brownsville and Matamoros have a holiday known as Charro Days to celebrate continued solidarity. Charro Days ceremoniously ends with the mayors of both cities meeting in the middle of our international bridge to shake hands as a sign of unity and camaraderie, promoting bicultural and binational identities. However, this cultural exchange and trust are often a one-sided endeavor and primarily only seen on behalf of Mexicans and Mexican Americans. I will, as quickly as possible, discuss the centuries of historical impacts of the Rio Grande Valley and American idealism. Historically, Mexicans have been dehumanized in America bipartisanly and systemically. It began with the colonization of the Americas by Spain, turning our delta into parts of Nuevo Santander and Coahuila, later Coahuila y Texas, with many native peoples being kidnapped for slave work. Mexico would then offer land grants to American settlers as a means of dealing with the native population. However, this led to further enslavement. The encroachment of American settlers and the prevailing slavery led to the Texas Revolution. During this time, Texas would establish the Texas Rangers for quote-unquote protection against the Indians. Shortly thereafter, we would have the Mexican-American War and later the Treaty of Guadalupe. With the land under U.S. control and the Texas Rangers there for protection, there would be years of bloodshed and hunting, lynching with interchangeable names of Indians and Mexicans, which would lead to La Matanza, one of the bloodiest periods in the borderlands. The persistent discrimination would prevail for decades and bleed to the federal level with many policies like Operation Wetback, dedicated to immigration law enforcement to remove Mexican immigrants from the United States, often removing U.S. citizens, Mexican Americans in the process. One of our representatives, he was actually one of the people that was shipped out and deported as a part of Operation Wetback. To continue to protect, quote-unquote, national security and public safety, ICE was founded in 2003. ICE has been funded bipartisanly over the past 2 decades with an $8 billion budget. The consistent dehumanization and prejudices have been justified through the use of quote-unquote Christian values. In solidarity with not just the plight of Mexican Americans but indigenous communities across the U.S., some of my colleagues created the following pieces. Alexander Caminos attended the Art Institute of Chicago for his undergraduate degree and the University of Texas at San Antonio for his MFA. He worked as a studio assistant for June Kaneko and is a former ceramics instructor for UT Pan American, now UTRGV. Currently, he teaches art at Harlingen CISD, where he has lived and worked in the Valley for the past 12 years. And he is most likely the funniest and brightest individual I know, with his knowledge and sophistication evident in his work. The piece I am choosing to discuss is Pine Ridge. Pine Ridge was an Oglala Lakota people reservation, the second largest in the United States. This piece was created during his early adulthood and while in a relational proximity to those of the Catholic faith. Mr. Caminos wanted to express his frustration at the knowledge of the blatant hypocrisy he had witnessed regarding the horrors of Pine Ridge and the Holy Rosary Mission School. The school forced Oglala Lakota children to attend it to promote Catholicism and quote-unquote civilization among the population, ripping these children away from their families to strip them of their spiritual traditions, culture, and languages. These children often experience brutality and violence, with many dying and us never knowing the true number of deaths. Mr. Caminos utilizes ceramic molds, caricatures of native peoples, American settlers, baby dolls, and various other figurative forms. He sculpted these forms to recreate the image of the cross and artfully crafted each figure to protrude and jut out of the form, an amalgamation attempting to escape itself. He emphasizes the figures and faces of the native peoples, ensuring that each face is facing forward throughout the piece, forcing his audience to face a native person. His use of glazes engulfs and highlights each figure, every nook and cranny, with that bright yellow drawing the viewer's eyes up and down the piece, forcing the viewer to acknowledge what the drips represent: bloodshed and forced assimilation. The next piece is by an indigenous Mexican-American woman native to the Rio Grande Delta. Amanda Pardo shares her own frustrations similar to those of Alex Caminos. Ms. Pardo received her Bachelor of Arts in History from UTRGV. She's an American history scholar and artist who focuses on women, gender, and the domestic space. She's incredibly kind and one of my dearest friends. Her piece, Forced Assimilation, independently builds on the ideas of the aforementioned boarding schools. Created early in her artistic career, she wanted to address the atrocities she had studied as an American historian, recounting how over 400 boarding schools like the one in Pine Ridge existed across the United States, contradicting the proclaimed civilization of Native peoples. Forced assimilation showcases the blatant unsavory truths of the boarding schools, accentuated by taking place within one. Her painting appears to be one scene, but in reality is a recreation, a documentation of a larger register with 3 acts. The painting is read from right to left, the first scene of native children being led by a cold white man in religious garb. The children are separated from the rest of the narrative by fabric scraps that depict real articles and documentary images of various boarding schools at different points in time as late as the 1980s. The second scene depicts Miss Pardo herself at the feet of Christ, placing herself directly in the narrative, witnessing what is occurring around her while acknowledging her own proximity to Christianity and indigeneity. She makes the intentional choice to keep her skin, the skin of the children, and the feet of Christ the same color. The final scene depicts what she felt was one of the most gut-wrenching and unimaginable brutalities. A cold white nun is seen holding a swaddled baby. Behind her is a furnace with its door open and smoke billowing out, stretching across the scenes. In said furnace is a red cloth, similar to that of the baby in the nun's arms. The furnace is burning so hot that it casts its own shadow, creating the silhouette of a building with a cross fixed atop it. This piece is a self-portrait in terms of the act of witnessing the hypocrisy of the church and the continued persecution of Native people. It is a statement and a means of further documentation within the American art canon and current contemporary art. In the midst of a crushing reality and my own faith having wavered, I think of the last artist I will be covering today. Stephen Hawks grew up in the Bible Belt, and his own perspectives on community, Christ, and art have always offered great insight both as my colleague and as an old friend. Mr. Hawks comes from a long line of Georgia ceramicists. He received his BFA in studio art from Valdosta State University and his MFA in studio art and ceramics from Florida State University. Hawks dedicated just over 13 years of his career to the RGV and is now a retired lecturer 3 for ceramics from UTRGV and is currently a self-employed artist. Elegy for an American Dream, American Idol, and the Ineluctable Evolution of the Cosmic Temple Form is a reimagining of the prophetic dreams that Mr. Hawks has had over his lifetime. The work attempts to understand and critique American consciousness whilst maintaining a respect for the logos proposed in Greek philosophical discourse and the Gospel of the Apostle John. In a sense, this piece is a self-portrait, given weight through the use of a rug hand-braided by his mother, linking him maternally to the ideas of creative order and the gateways of spiritual enlightenment. Created with great respect to Indigenous American and European American culture, the piece exemplifies the ideas of the spiritual unity, the home, and the hearth. There are direct links to the enthroned God with 4 evangels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the 4 human temperaments, caloric, melancholic, phlegmatic, and sanguine. There is also an allegorical notion of the coyote trickster spirit in Native American culture that stands in place of an Anubis as a spirit guide. The utilization of Rudolf Steiner's "that good may become" harkens to a form of spiritual comprehension on an intellectual and research-based intuitive model of self-exploration. The layered dialogues of the installation as a type of monument suggest a grounded and acknowledging reverence to spiritualism, theology, the earth, and the cosmos. This piece for me was a revelation. It reignited a need to visit the dialogues of Christianity and faith among my peers and in my home, the good and the bad, for better or for worse. It begged the question of who exists in the realms of spiritualization and if need for a deeper introspection would be necessary. The dialogues of thy neighbor are explored through my peers' art and discussions, and their impacts on the RGB community as a whole and on me on a smaller scale. I hope this presentation sparks intrigue and faith, and I hope it allows you to reflect on what our society currently says about my people, and beyond the homogenous sensibilities proposed by many on what a community like mine looks like. I hope you choose to engage not just with the art of my community, but also with its people. I have a bunch of sources, but thank you.
To Ron and Rachel for